Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, nonprofit leaders, we have hit 400 episodes. That's right, we have released over 400 episodes of the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership podcast. And in celebration, I went and looked at the numbers, and from the last 100 episodes of this show, 2 years worth of conversations, I wanted to know which 5 you actually listened to most. And quick note on how these were ranked, because I'm going to tell you which 5 were the top most listened to episodes over the past 100 episodes. And a quick note on how I ranked these. I looked at more than just lifetime downloads, because that would be unfair, because if you've ever followed podcast stats, which I don't expect you have, but there's a learning moment here, older episodes have more time to pile up listens because podcast episodes stay evergreen. So I looked at 3 windows. I looked at how many listens came in the first 30 days, in the first 90 days, and lifetime numbers. And the same 5 episodes were on top in all 3 categories. So I know that these episodes are special. And while they seemingly are all on different topics, trauma, cash flow, starting a nonprofit, equity, organizational design, underneath all 5 episodes have a common thread that I will tell you about at the end. All right, let's count down. Coming in at number 5 is an episode on trauma-informed leadership with Dr. Melanie Gray. She is a nurse educator who spent over 20 years in healthcare before she started teaching nonprofit leaders about burnout and the nervous system. She's been an ER nurse, she served on boards, she knows what it looks like when someone is running on empty and still showing up. And here's a line that framed the conversation for me. Trauma-informed care helps you consider what has happened to someone, not what is wrong with someone. Let me say that again. Trauma-informed care helps you consider what has happened to someone, not what is wrong with someone. And I just think that's so powerful. I want you to just write it on a sticky note and paste it by your desk. When we apply this lens to the people we serve, Melanie's point is that most of us have never once applied it to our own staff, right? So we apply this to people we serve, but we typically don't apply this to our own staff. And she even cited the CDC on this, that before the pandemic, over 67% of people had experienced some form of trauma, violence, divorce, chronic illness, community trauma. Add in the pandemic since then and all the prices going up with rent and groceries, and your team is walking in the door carrying that. She added another incredible point to this conversation, and I want you to listen up for this one really clearly. all money is not good money, but she made I've said that all money is not good money, but she made an example that I thought was so powerful. All right. So her example was that you get a grant, everybody celebrates, and then the program has to be delivered, the reporting has to be built, and somebody has to reconcile a restricted fund that didn't exist last night. And the grant paid for the program and staff, but it probably didn't pay for the person who has to do the invoice and the tracking and the compliance and who had to apply for the grant in the first place, right? Grants typically don't cover their maintenance costs, or at least not in full. So what's happening is you are actually accepting a grant that puts your team over capacity. So you're welcoming overwhelm through your own front door. And I just want to say, let's stop doing that, right? So don't take money that brings overwhelm with it. All right, coming in at number 4 is Neil Shah and an episode we call The Evolving Role of Nonprofit CFOs. I love Neil because he is such a forward thinker and really, really top-notch when it comes to thinking about nonprofits and money. He has been an outsourced as well as in-house CFO for nonprofits for over 2 decades, and organizations from a few $1 million up to nearly $500 million in annual revenue. And note this, he did not come from an accounting background. He came from a tech startup background and learned accounting on the job, which I think is partly why he is so good at it. So I asked him what a great nonprofit CEO actually does. And here's what he said. Right? All the important stuff, right? Tracking money, all those things are important. But he said, I feel the bigger job of the CFO is to build that partnership with the senior leadership team. Sometimes it's a no, sometimes it's not just a no though. It's a no, but let's find a way to do it together. That's that partnership piece coming in, right? It's not, do we have the money or do we not have the money? Money is a tool that we use, right? So what Neil is talking about is the greater, more important job of the CFO is, do they know how to use money as a tool and partner with their leadership team to use that tool as well as it possibly can be used? So yes, clean audits matter and compliance matters, but if all your finance function does is document what already happened, you're not really helping your organization as much as you're helping the IRS. Neil's most useful tactical thing was about financial storytelling. You should absolutely re-listen to this episode to hear what he talks about, what CFOs need to learn most, which is telling stories with the numbers. So he described watching board members' eyes glaze over while he put a full profit and loss statement up on the screen. So he decided to stop doing that, and now he puts up just 4 to 5 slides, charts, not spreadsheets, and the financials go in the appendix where the finance committee can still see them, but their eyes don't glaze over in the meeting. He says they're not going to remember a bunch of spreadsheets, but they will remember the 1 or 2 major points that you wanted to present to them. And this is his best structural tip from the episode. Stop looking at net income. Pull out the one-time money, the interest, the depreciation, and look at your operating surplus or deficit over 5 to 10 years. That's not annually, folks, 5 to 10 years. That's the number that tells you whether you're actually spending more than you bring in. And net income will hide it. Why does it hide it? Because fundraising is in there to fill that deficit, but you've got to know that number. Okay. Number 3. Oh, and my key takeaway from Neil is solve the problem, don't fill the gap. And if you have to lay your numbers out differently to see what the real problem is, then do that. You're allowed to put your numbers in whatever format you would like. All right, coming in at number 3 is Katerina Manoff on how to start and run a high-impact, scalable nonprofit. This was episode 346. Katerina is the founder and CEO of Engine, they pair Ukrainians who want to practice English with volunteers, mostly American high schoolers, about $1 million budget, 44 staff, and most of them in Ukraine, and more than 50,000 pairings made. So Katerina had wanted to start a nonprofit for years before she started this one, and she kept not doing it, and here's why. It wasn't for lack of passion, she said. It was just that I hadn't stumbled upon the idea where I was driven by a need. I didn't build around what was most interesting to me, but really what was needed most. Folks, this is so important. All too often, new nonprofits get started. They are a passion project for the founder, but they haven't really taken the time to research and maybe let themselves fall in love with the real problem and the real need. Okay, so waiting for demand instead of waiting for permission is rare, but it is the secret to success. And it doesn't have to be rare because you can use research to fill that gap and go from initial idea to a true problem you're solving on your own timeline. So the mechanism underneath Engine is really beautiful piece of design, right? It's the thing that I want you to steal. Ukrainians needed conversational English practice. They don't need any more controversy. They needed conversational English practice. American high schoolers needed service hours that fit around school. Two separate problems where each group's need is the other group's solution. This reminds me of a well-known entrepreneur consultant, Jay Abraham, who calls this looking for where your problem is someone else's solution. He calls that a fantastic business strategy, and most of us never go looking. So here's a key takeaway I want you to think about. If you're trying to solve a problem, instead of thinking, what is solving this problem going to cost me? Try to think about who, like my problem is probably someone else's solution. There's that old saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure, right? So think about where can you find somebody who needs the solution of your problem. Now, here's one more part from Katerina's episode that I want you to take note of, and it's about grants. Katerina said grants have not worked for them at all. Their primary funding source is their own volunteers. Second is a nominal $30 a year student fee with scholarships available, right? So at $30, people value more when they pay for it, right? So students are paying a fee. It gets them to show up. It makes them more likely to tell their friends because there's a scholarship. They're not creating a big barrier here. And so that is a part of their funding that has helped them succeed. Okay, now I want you to be careful here in thinking about your funding, right? If you have heard me talk about funding, I like to talk about the funding layer cake. Major individual gifts at the bottom, then larger scale, smaller individual donors come next, and then corporate donations if those are relevant for your organization. And finally, grants should be the icing on your cake. You don't want to be dependent on grants. Please, folks, we have so many episodes about this. You've probably seen it in your communities. You may be experiencing it yourself. Please do not have the core of your operations and programming be dependent on grants. All right, coming in at number 2 is Dr. Eugene Manley Jr. on leading an equity-focused nonprofit. Dr. Manley Jr. runs the STEM and Cancer Equity Foundation. He gave me the cleanest working definition of equity I have ever heard, and it's not a values statement, it's a test. I love a good test, not like the test to see if you pass or fail, but a test that gives you answers, a litmus test, if you will. Okay, here it is. You have to be willing to address an issue where disparity impacts one or more problems. If it helps everyone, it's not equity, right? So we are fixing issues of inequity, right? So if it helps everybody the same, that's like all ships rising, but it's not going to fix which ships are sinking because they're leaking and which ones aren't, right? So we have to kind of spot treat if we're going to raise systemic equity to a level that when the tide rises, all ships actually do rise. Okay, so he also told me something that I have thought a lot since then. In the published research on lung cancer cell lines, there are roughly 800 of them, around 390 from Asian patients, 200 from white patients, 30 from Black patients. And in this specific subset, he was describing exactly one from a Black individual. One. So when a therapy gets developed on that foundation and someone tells you it works, the honest answer is we know it works for people who were in the data, people who were part of the study. And that's a design problem that shows up in real people. I know this, my own research into women's health as a woman. Right? I have stumbled upon that fact as well. The majority of research is on men. So we have proof that something works on men. But as you might have noticed, women's bodies work a little differently than men's. And so not everything that applies to a man's body applies to a woman's. So he also said something else that I think a lot of you might benefit from hearing. Some organizations get caught in you having to do everything. Have you ever felt that way? If you fix one issue, get good at that so you can measure it, so you can scale it. Then you go to the next thing. Then you don't have to do everything at once because that is a key recipe for burnout. And I live this sentence, right? So my clients usually come to me, they are caught up in trying to do everything, and I help them truly prioritize, decide which thing to fix first, stay focused with their team on fixing the first thing first, getting it good, getting it humming along, and then moving on to the next thing. And that is how we go from overwhelmed and burnt out to actually doing more, getting more done, while working less and feeling less burnt out. It's kind of amazing. We all should be doing it. If you want to learn how to do that with me, feel free to go to saraholivieri.com/apply or application. Both links work, and I'd be happy to have a quick chat with you. I am only currently working with organizations one-on-one, so if you are a very small startup, you're welcome to submit an application, but it's not likely that we're going to be a great fit to work together at this time, but I may still have options with you for you, so don't hesitate to fill out an application. I read them all personally myself, and we'll get back to you. Okay, coming in at number one, the most popular of the last 100 or so episodes, and by a real margin in every time window. Pierre Berestan, and I am mispronouncing his name, I'm sure, but go to the episode. I probably got it right because I make a point of getting them right in the episodes. He is the CEO of Safe Alliance in Austin, Texas, and they are a domestic violence support agency serving about 1,000 people a day. 1,000 people a day. They house about 1,000 people a night. And here's the opening of the point that he wants to make for you to listen to. The nonprofit sector has been positioned for decades as a backdrop for everything that society breaks, or everything that breaks in society. Let me read that again. The nonprofit sector has been positioned for decades as a backstop for everything that breaks in society. Whatever falls through, we catch. Housing fails, Nonprofits, we catch it. Healthcare fails, we catch it. Schools fail, we catch it. And because that's the story everybody agrees on, we get funded like a backstop. Thin, emergency only. We're so grateful for that funding. But here's where Pierre turns it around. He says we need to stop seeing nonprofits as permanent triage units for social failure. We are not emergency rooms, and instead begin recognizing us as engines of community problem solving. Engines of community problem solving. I love this. His phrase for what we actually should be doing are civic laboratories, right? Experimenting, investing, research and development. These are the words that we should apply to nonprofits. And I couldn't agree with him more. A laboratory is where you find out things. It's how you have a hypothesis about a problem that nobody has solved. You build a small version, you run it with real people, you watch what happens, you adjust, you learn, and then when you find a solution, you share it out with the world. This is the description that I would most love applied to nonprofits as the great innovators of the world. Forget Silicon Valley. Nonprofits are coming to take over innovation. And I want you to think about what this sector has actually invented. Domestic violence shelters did not exist as a concept until nonprofits built them. Neither did hospice. Neither did needle exchange or supported employment or restorative justice in schools or the entire practice of harm reduction. Every one of those started as somebody's untested idea run on a shoestring with no guarantee it would work. Most of them are now standalone projects, and a lot of them are now government funded because nonprofits figured out a solution where nobody else was willing to, and they got it to work. However, my concern is that because we aren't funded like top research institutions all through our sector, probably we could make even better solutions if we thought of ourselves in this way. Okay, so that is our number one episode. And here's the key takeaway. Your scarcity is mostly designed, and design can be changed. So, before we wrap up here, did you catch what all five have in common? Melanie says culture is a design choice. Neil says your financial reporting is a design choice. Katerina says your funding model is a design choice. Your impact model is a design choice. And Eugene says who sits at the center of your program is a design choice. And last but not least, sitting in number one, Pierre says your entire experience of abundance or scarcity is a design choice. Nobody in the top five told you to work harder. No one. That's what you voted for with your download button over the last 2 years. You are not looking for motivation. You already have that in abundance, my nonprofit people. You're looking for someone to tell you that the thing crushing you is structure, and that structure can be rebuilt. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. When you're in scarcity, the obstacle in front of you looks like a wall or a cliff. It looks like the thing that ends the story. But if you can get something to shift, if you can shift from scarcity to a proactive mindset, to a design thinking mindset, and you look again, you might realize that that cliff is just a 6-inch step down. That wall is totally something you can walk around or go in a different direction, or it might not even exist. You might have imagined the wall. A different design can make the same obstacle disappear or irrelevant. I've linked all 5 episodes in the show notes. If you only have time for one, start with Pierre. If you're tired right now, start with Melanie. And I encourage you to listen to all 5 and let me know which one is your favorite. Until next time, I wish you all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.